My name is Siripan. I'm 75 years old, and I want to begin tonight by telling you something about emotional pain that nobody told me for most of my life. Something that I had to discover the hard way, through decades of doing the opposite, through years of fighting and suppressing and running from the very thing I needed to face. I believed for most of my adult life that emotional pain was a problem to be solved, that it arrived as an indication that something was wrong, either with my circumstances or with me, and that the appropriate response was to fix it, to make it stop, to eliminate the source or suppress the feeling or think my way to a different emotional state. I had an entire repertoire of strategies for dealing with emotional pain, and none of them healed anything. Because healing is not what happens when you solve a problem. Healing is what happens when you finally stop running long enough to meet what is there. And the Buddhist teachings I want to share with you tonight are not strategies for making emotional pain go away. They are teachings for how to be with emotional pain in a way that allows it to move through you and complete itself, which is the only way it ever actually goes. I want to tell you how I learned this, not from a teacher or a text or a moment of sudden insight, from my body. I was 58 years old. I had been carrying a grief for 3 years, a loss that I had never fully allowed myself to feel, because the feeling, when it started to come, was so large that I was convinced it would destroy me. And so I kept it at bay. Through constant activity, through focusing on others, through the various forms of functional avoidance that look like coping, but are actually a very sophisticated form of running. Until one evening, I couldn't run anymore. The avoidance had exhausted itself, and the grief simply came. And it was large. Exactly as large as I had feared. And I sat with it, not because I was brave or because I had learned to, but because there was nothing left to do. And something remarkable happened. It did not destroy me. It moved through me. Like weather, like a storm that was very intense while it was happening, and then, having happened, was over. And what was on the other side of it was not emptiness, but a quality of openness that the 3 years of carrying the unexpressed grief had not allowed. I had been afraid of the storm. I had not understood that the storm was the healing. The first Buddhist teaching for healing emotional pain is this: suffering is not caused by what we feel. It is caused by our resistance to what we feel. This teaching comes from the heart of the Buddhist understanding of dukkha, of suffering, and it reverses the intuition that most of us carry about emotional pain. We believe the pain is the problem. We believe that if we can eliminate the feeling, we will eliminate the suffering. But the Buddhist insight is more precise and more radical than that. The feeling is not the suffering. The resistance to the feeling is the suffering. When grief arises and you allow yourself to feel grief, grief moves. It is intense and it is real and it is not comfortable, but it moves. When grief arises and you resist it, when you push it away, suppress it, distract yourself from it, argue with it, tell yourself you shouldn't be feeling it, the grief does not move. It stays. It accumulates. It compounds with the secondary suffering of the resistance itself. And what was originally a feeling that could have moved in hours becomes something that takes years, because you have invested your energy not in feeling it, but in not feeling it. This teaching asks you to consider whether the pain you are carrying might be smaller than you think and much older than it needs to be, specifically because you have been so skilled at not letting it be felt. The second teaching is the practice the Buddhist tradition calls touching the earth, returning to the body when emotional pain arises, not to escape the pain, to locate it, because emotional pain, when you are in it, can feel like it is everywhere, like it is the atmosphere rather than a feeling, like it fills all available space and has no edges. But when you bring your attention into your body and actually look for where the pain is living physically, something interesting happens. It has a location, a specific tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your belly, a constriction in your throat, a particular quality of sensation somewhere specific. And when you find the physical location, when you actually feel the sensation rather than the story about the sensation, the pain becomes more manageable. Not because it is less intense, because it is no longer infinite. It has a size, a location, a texture. And something with a size and a location and a texture is something that can be worked with, something that can be breathed into, something that can be sat with rather than fled from. The practice is to meet emotional pain in the body rather than in the mind, to feel it physically rather than think it mentally. Because thinking about pain keeps the story alive and gives it the energy it needs to continue. Feeling it physically allows it to complete its natural process, which is to arise, be felt, and pass. The third teaching is one that the Buddha returned to throughout his entire teaching life, and it is perhaps the most difficult to truly receive because it contradicts the deepest wish we bring to our pain. Everything passes, including this. The emotional pain you are carrying right now, however old and however heavy and however permanent it feels, is impermanent. It is not a feature of what you are. It is a weather pattern moving through you. And weather patterns, even the most severe ones, always pass. They pass not because they are resolved or fixed or figured out. They pass because that is the nature of all phenomena. They arise, they exist, they pass. The resistance to this teaching usually comes in the form of the mind's insistence that this particular pain is different, that this loss is too large, this wound too deep, this grief too specific to be subject to the ordinary laws of impermanence. But the teaching does not make exceptions. Everything passes, including the things we are most convinced will never pass. And holding this teaching not as a consolation, but as a fact about the nature of experience, changes how you relate to the pain. It allows you to be in it without being convinced it is permanent, to feel it fully without believing it defines you forever. If something in what I'm sharing is reaching a place in you that has been closed for a while, if something is softening that has been held tight, stay with me, because the next teachings go deeper. And if this space has given you something tonight, return to it when the pain is loud. These teachings are not for one listening. They are for returning to again and again as the same old pain comes back around, as it always does, until you finally meet it the way it needs to be met. The fourth teaching is about the second arrow. The Buddha used this image to describe one of the primary ways we compound our suffering unnecessarily. Imagine you are struck by an arrow. That arrow represents the original pain, the loss, the wound, the hurt that came from outside and landed in you. The pain of that arrow is real, and it is legitimate, and it requires care. But then, almost immediately, we strike ourselves with a second arrow, the judgment about the pain, the shame about having it, the comparison to others who seem not to struggle this way, the self-criticism for not being further along in healing, the story about what the pain means about us and our lives and our worth. This second arrow causes more suffering than the first, because the first arrow was not your choice, but the second arrow is something you are doing to yourself. And the practice is to notice when you are reaching for the second arrow, when you are adding shame to grief, judgment to fear, self-criticism to the ordinary human experience of being hurt, and to practice not shooting it, to let the first arrow be what it is, painful and real and demanding of care, without adding the second arrow of what it means and what it says about you. This practice alone, removing the second arrow, removes more suffering than almost anything else I have ever practiced. The fifth teaching is about the relationship between self-compassion and healing. The Buddhist tradition is precise about this. Self-compassion is not indulgence. It is not lowering your standards or excusing genuine harm or wallowing in self-pity. Self-compassion is the simple recognition that you are a human being who suffers, exactly like every other human being who has ever lived, and that this shared suffering, this universal experience of pain and loss and difficulty, makes you deserving of exactly the same kindness you would offer to anyone else who was struggling. The practice is this: when you are in pain, imagine a close friend in the same pain. Hear them describing what they are feeling, and notice what naturally arises in you toward them. The tenderness, the wish that they were not suffering, the genuine care. And then, with intention and with effort, if necessary, offer that same response to yourself. Not because you have earned it, because you are suffering. And suffering is sufficient reason for kindness, always, without condition, without exception. The sixth teaching addresses something that keeps many people from healing completely: the confusion between letting go and forgetting, or between letting go and saying something was acceptable. Letting go does not mean the thing that happened was okay. It does not mean you approve of it, or that it didn't matter, or that the person who caused the harm is absolved of responsibility. Letting go means you are releasing your own suffering. You are choosing to stop paying with your daily peace and your present life for something that has already been paid for in pain. The debt of suffering is already paid. Every day you spend in the pain of an old wound is another payment on something that is already settled. Letting go is not for the person who hurt you, it is for you. It is the recognition that your life is happening right now, not in the past where the wound is, and that every moment you spend holding the wound in the present is a moment of your actual life that is not available for anything else. The teaching is not about feeling ready to let go. You will almost never feel ready. The teaching is about choosing to before you feel ready, because you understand what continuing to hold costs you. The seventh teaching is the one that holds all the others together, and it is this: you are not broken. The pain you carry, however old and however deep, is not evidence of something fundamentally wrong with you. It is evidence of something fundamentally human about you, that you have loved, that you have cared, that you were present enough and open enough to be affected by what happened to you. A closed heart cannot be wounded. Only an open one can. And your open heart, the very thing that allowed the wound, is also the thing that allows healing, is also the thing that allows connection and love and the full experience of being alive. You are not broken. You are hurt. And hurt, when it is met with the right quality of attention, when it is allowed to be what it is, without the second arrows and the resistance and the story about what it means, heals. It always heals. Given enough time and enough of the right kind of attention, it always heals. Not into the absence of the wound, into something that carries the wound as part of what it is, without being defined by it. Into someone who has been through something difficult and is still here, still open, still capable of the love that made the wound possible in the first place. That is not brokenness. That is the most essential kind of wholeness there is. My name is Sirifan. I'm 75 years old. I live in a small temple where the teachings I have shared tonight are not philosophy, but the texture of daily practice, where grief is met and not fled, where pain is felt and not performed, where the second arrow is caught before it lands and set down, where letting go is not about forgetting, but about choosing to live in this moment rather than in the moment where the wound happened, where the recognition that everything passes is not a consolation but a freedom, and where the knowledge that no one here and no one anywhere is broken is the ground beneath everything else. That ground is available to you too, tonight, in whatever you are carrying, in whatever has been staying with you too long because you have not yet found a way to let it complete itself. These 7 teachings are not a cure, they are a doorway, and the doorway is already open. All that is needed is the willingness to walk through it. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 teachings speaks most directly to where you are tonight. Not which is most interesting, which one touched the thing you most need to hear. Because knowing that is often the beginning of the healing itself.